Broad Street Review podcast is an extension of Broad Street Review, Philly's home for arts, culture, and conversation, an online arts and culture journal covering the greater Philadelphia area. I'm your host, Darnell Radford. Today on the podcast, I turn over the virtual studio to the team that keeps Broad Street Review running. In a sort of year in review, our lead editors and executive director share some of their media recommendations as the year draws to a close. Here is a chat with Editor-in-Chief Elena Johns, Associate Editor Kyle V. Hiller, and Executive Director Neil Barthan of Broad Street Review. And welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Darnell Radford, and today I am in the virtual studio because that is where we live. And but today I am joined by the team, the engine that keeps Broad Street Review running. I'm here with Elena Johns, Editor-in-Chief, Kyle V. Hiller, Associate Editor, and Neil Barthan, Executive Director. Welcome back to the podcast. Yay!
Yay! Hi, Darnell.
Hey.
Hey.
It's so funny. We all work in the same space, but not. We see each other in only when we can book an interview.
Yes.
or accidentally.
Yes.
Which honestly happens a lot.
Yep.
Yeah, which just tells you that Broad Street Review is running nonstop, every single day for the entire year. Like, even when you're on vacation, Broad Street Review is still running. There are still things coming out, and we just do our job. We just go and go and go and go. Okay. So I think it's really fun when we get a chance to kind of get an end of year review sort of conversation together, and I'm glad to have you all here in the studio. So what's been going on? It's been an uneventful year.
Yeah, just
to say the
like
least.
All the others before it.
Yeah, really.
It's still not 2020.
Yes.
Notable for its lack of challenges the past 12 months.
I was saying before we hit record, like, there was a time where we managed all of this. Like, how, I mean, not that we're not managing it, but it just seems like everything is, there's so much more than there was before. I don't know. Or it's probably the same. It just doesn't feel the same because of that intermission gave us all sort of a mindset to think that we could breathe a little bit. Now I'm taking shorter breaths. I don't know about you guys.
I think we're finding our breaths wherever we can, and I think that is kind of the theme and the spirit of what we wanted to chat with each other about today and about our followers and listeners, what we do when we're not at our desks for Broad Street Review, because one of the most fun things to do, especially as you're heading into a new year, is to be like, hey, what have you been reading? What podcasts do you love? Like, what movies did you not miss? So we can all build our lists. And yeah, that's what we want to come and chat with you about now. We have some picks that we're thrilled about. And also, we would love to hear from our readers and listeners too, as this conversation continues in December. Like, what are you into? Let's make it a conversation.
Yeah, that'll be great. So I'm essentially going to turn the podcast over to the three of you. I'm going to chime in periodically. I'm going to play producer today, and I'll just chime in periodically. So go ahead and take the floor.
Cool. Thanks, Darnell.
Great. Elena, what have you been reading recently?
I mean, what have I not been reading is sometimes the question. I I have a long list, but I'm going to keep it to a couple short picks because I know that other folks have some really good picks too. One book that I read actually pretty early this year, it was one of the first ones I read, is a book called Entangled Life by a mycologist named Merlin Sheldrake. It's wonderful. It's a book about mushrooms and fungi, and it is not only packed with the most wonderful facts about mushrooms and fungi and the stories about the people who love them, but it also will kind of blow your whole mind open as far as what defines sentient life or what defines intelligence. It might be very different from what humans think it is. So that is definitely a book I would recommend folks get their hands on. And I could do more, but I bet you guys might have picks to land on too.
Don't mind me. I'm just adding to cart. Yes.
This is the real point of this conversation is for all of us to just buy more books, right?
Exactly. As if I need to add more to the thing. So what's interesting, I actually have not been reading a lot this year. At least not in the traditional sense of what reading is. I feel like I've just been kind of diving into maybe a lot of pieces here and there, just trying to kind of gather what do I want to be reading going forward, because if there's anything I've learned is that during this little panini that we've been in the last few years, is that I've been reading a lot of stuff that I just don't want to read because I feel like I'm supposed to be a reader because I'm a writer. So I've been leaning a lot on nonfiction because I feel like genre fiction lately. I don't think I've read a genre fiction book all the way through since 2018. It's been a minute. I'm not finding what I want, right? So, but I've been reading a lot of nonfiction because it just seems like, hey, I need to understand the reality I'm in here. Maybe not necessarily anybody else's, not Duncan on books, but I've been enjoying very thoroughly, even though it is a very dense read, but it's a very necessary read. This book called Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Maree Brown.
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it, so I don't need to really spiel about it too much, but I do just know that like the way that Adrienne Maree Brown is able to frame so many different topics, even if it is borrowing from fiction. Like I want to read her Octavia Butler book as well. Just putting pleasure in the framework of, hey, look, how can we be more active in our own personal lives to be better advocates for our own pleasure experiences, being better advocates for other people's pleasure experiences, and understanding what the barriers are there, why we are the way that we are in this world as far as what our relationship to pleasure, how we translate that into active measures. It's a very dense read. I can only read maybe a chapter at a time. It's a lot to take in, and I'm also a slow reader too. I like to read more intentionally, which is something else I'm embracing this year. It's just taking my time to read. Because the sports move so fast, but I highly recommend that. And I think that's kind of been my prime book this year. I've been reading a lot of. I'm just completing my yoga teacher training, so it's been a lot of textbooks and stuff like that. So I don't know if that translates here, but I've been reading a lot of that stuff too. But I know that something like Pleasure Activism is definitely an extension of that. So that is my book recommendation. Go add that to cart as well. It will pair very well with your book on sentient life and mushrooms. So. Cheers.
Thank you, Kyle. Love it.
Yeah.
Neil, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, I've got a very different recommendation, so hold on to your hats, folks. It is a YA novel called You Have a Match by Emma Lord. Sometime this summer, I texted a couple friends probably, and said, I think what my brain needs right now in terms of long-form reading is a YA summer camp rom-com. Is that even a thing? And it turns out, yes. Yes, it is. This book is contemporary. It came out in the past couple of years, and it touches on at-home DNA tests and family identity and social media in the lives of teens and how friendships evolve. And it was the sort of book that I read just a chapter at a time right before bed, but it gave me so much to think about and appreciate for what youth are going through right now. And it was such a departure from what I often read or talk about reading, but I really found it to be more thought-provoking than I thought. I was going in for something heartwarming and adorable, and I got more than I bargained for in the best possible way.
That sounds awesome.
Thanks for that, Neil.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to do a little, in the interest of keeping this bite-size-ish, shift to a different genre and maybe give some recommendations about what we have streamed this year? It could be a TV series or a movie, documentary, anything like that.
I'm down to pivot.
Yeah.
Let's pivot.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything that I've forgotten. As soon as you said documentary, I thought, surely I've seen documentaries of late, but what?
I mean, I watched one last night on Netflix about tornadoes. I am now traumatized. I was like, I don't know how long I'm going to have nightmares. I don't know why I did that to myself, but I can jump in with go ahead, Neil.
If it helps, Elena, I don't think tornadoes are of great concern in South Philly.
But Neil, here's the whole last 5 minutes of the documentary was about global warming and how tornado zones are expanding. And basically the whole point is that if you're not living in a tornado zone now, guess what? You will be. And it was a lot. Anyway.
Did Philly have...
I don't like this sequel documentary.
We had a couple tornadoes in 2019. I remember that storm very vividly.
No, yeah.
Because I was also in South Philly when that happened, and there was a lot of damage in, I think, another part of town. It wasn't South Philly where it hit, but yeah.
No, yeah. I think it was Northeast.
On the way.
No.
Was it Northeast? Okay.
Yeah.
Still,
but you know what?
This is too close to home.
It's too much for me. I gotta change the subject. One show that I watched this year that I would totally recommend that surprised me. I jumped into it not knowing, what the deal was. I started watching Severance on Apple TV. Has anyone watched that yet? I don't want to say too. I don't want to spoil anything about the premise or the plot, but I was just immediately drawn in by this world exploring the ways that we have to fracture ourselves to function in the world, and all of the ways that our modern workplace is this weird, tender little dystopia, and how and why we move there. And I found the story was just so unexpectedly unusual and gripping. So that's one of my top picks for this year.
Does that leave me here with the streamy streams?
I mean,
so fun story.
Go for it. I'll get back to it.
Okay. No, but I'll just drop a quick anecdote here. Tornadoes. I love them. I watch Twister all the time. I wanted to chase tornadoes when I was a kid because I just was absolutely fascinated that those things happened in the world. And this is also coming from a kid who was also terrified of thunderstorms, so I don't understand the dissonance that was there. But yes, I will also be adding that to the queue. So thanks yet again, Elena, for your wonderful suggestions.
You're welcome. Maybe we can, when I get scared, I can text you about it, and then you'll understand what I'm going through.
Yeah, I'll totally understand.
Great.
I don't. But Neil, if you want to finish.
No.
Yeah, I'll throw it.
Yeah, go.
I'll throw in that something I just finished this week, actually, is the final season of Derry Girls.
Oh,
so good.
Which, features, it's a bunch of Catholic teens in Londonderry, Northern Ireland during the early to mid 90s, during the time referred to as the Troubles, which is part of world history that I don't really have an understanding of, but was, speaking of sentience, I was sentient enough at the time to understand that things were happening over there, but I don't have any of the nuances down yet. And what it's actually done has led me to track down some books so that I can understand it. And I don't know, there's something about this particular conflict that I want to understand. And I think some of it is that it overlaps with my own lifetime. and with the lives of people I've actually met in a way that I find really intriguing. So, yeah, conflict. How about it?
And also, Neil, like, maybe you guys could land on this too. Like, Neil, what you're saying about something overlapping with our lifetime, things that are taking place in the 90s. Like, I feel like that there is this explosion of media that is just huge 90s nostalgia, like including another show I watched recently was Yellow Jackets, that sort of weird supernatural horror survivalist drama about a team of girls soccer players in the 90s who are in a plane crash, and then a parallel contemporary story about them in modern times, and seeing like all of these like middle-age-ish people and realizing they're my age. They're literally my age, and this story about them in the 90s is also paralleling my experience. Anyway, I don't know. Do you guys gravitate toward that like 90s type media or not? Like, does it feel good to you?
I do. But so this kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, Jimmy.
Sorry, my dog. There's the mail.
No.
The mail is
Sorry.
here. The mail is here.
Ginny recommends the mail.
Strong opinions over there.
Yeah, I've got a huge mailing list that I need to get on. But no, I think it's interesting because my picks actually are very 90s inspired, at least. Or at least the thread is. So I think so at the beginning, maybe not the beginning, but towards the middle of quarantine in 2020, I found myself going through the original Power Rangers, right? And that was a very big childhood thing for me. And it was also a very big childhood thing for my partner. And that's something that we got to revisit in like a really comforting way. Which is interesting because, we just lost Jason David Frank, rest in peace. So that hit me hard. But also what that really kind of jettisoned me towards was a lot of the footage coming from Power Rangers is from an actual TV show from Japan in the 80s. One of the shows that I was watching is called Zoo Ranger, Zyuranger. It's a Japanese TV show from I think the late 80s, early 90s. All the footage from Power Rangers on there, but it's also this really great story of just like these 5 people who are coming together who used to be alive at once upon a time, and there's this evil that's kind of come back, and it's who we remember as Rita Repulsa essentially, but her name is totally different. The characters are totally different, and it's just like it's very Shakespearean, like just this whole family dynamic of like, hey, here's these 2 brothers who are rivals, and we don't understand why they're fighting with each other. One of the brothers doesn't even understand at all because this was their past life that they, don't remember, don't recall. So just kind of coming together and then seeing that healing journey, but then also there's tragedy there too. And it's just like, wow, this is a leaps and bounds better than Power Rangers, even though I still have mad love for that show. And then that has segued into a couple more, which I'll be really quick as possible about, because I really love both of these shows this year. I'm going to go full weeb here. Darnell understands. I am really in love with 2 shows this year. One of them is this show called Skeban Deka, which translates to Gangster Girl. It's this Japanese TV show about these high school girl gangs who are all beefing with each other, but there's also this stuff that's going on with like the police and law enforcement in the city, and there's just something going on that like someone's trying to take over the world, and it's actually one of the high schoolers in the school. So they're all just beefing with each other, they're all fighting, and it's just like it's really funny, it's really like tongue-in-cheek, but it's also got like some really heartwarming moments and stuff like that too, which is really fun. So I'm thoroughly enjoying that, but I had to go all the way to archive.org to find it. It is not streaming anywhere, so hit me up via email, khiller@brushyreview.com. I'll send you some links. And then more contemporary is Midnight Diner, which is this Japanese TV show as well from the late 2000s, which I have a nostalgia for because that's when I was going to film school. So it has this like kind of grainy film look to it where like digital cameras weren't really that great just yet, but we were on the cusp of HD. All great, very reminiscent and nostalgic in that way. But it's just all these people with regular old lives in Japan coming together in this little tiny cute little diner in Shinjuku in Japan, and they just live their lives together. And here are all these regulars that know each other, who are interacting with each other in their own worlds and stuff like that, but just making this mundane life so extraordinary. I can go on and on about the characters, but also it functions as a cooking show. So each episode, the characters focus, their whatever they're experiencing is based on a dish that probably has some sort of nostalgia to it, or something that makes them think about who they used to be, who they want to be, who they think they can be, and all this other stuff. And then they give you the recipe for it at the end of the episode, and it's always different. It's not just like, hey, do this, do that, do that. Sometimes it might be a song, sometimes it might be an illustration, sometimes it's there are Yakuza in this show that have like these really charming like love stories happening. It's just great, and it feels good. It is very chill. It is the lo-fi hip hop, listen to beats while you're studying of Netflix. So go check that out. That is streaming on Netflix. I highly recommend it. It is the coziest thing I've ever seen in my life, and that's exactly what I need in 2022, because life is hard. So I need some coziness in my television these days. So sorry to hold up all that, but I'm just really excited about all those shows.
No,
I
love it, and
Oh man,
yeah. Remember when we were at Terakawa back during the Fringe, and you were telling me about? I've been wanting to dive into it since you told me about it, so I'm just super glad that you brought it here again.
Dive in. Those first few episodes are weird, and I can't get enough of them. These are just the characters are so interesting. I've never seen anything like this show before. So go check it out. And I don't really like to recommend TV shows too often, but I just gave you 3. So 3, 2, yeah, go watch Power Rangers 2. It's only 4. 4?
2.
Yeah. I don't know, let's keep going.
Truly, that's one of the best TV show recommendations I've heard in a long time.
Thank you.
Like I have an internal tension of I'm trying to square your description with shows I'm even lightly familiar with, like Cheers, but also recognizing that it doesn't have to fit that mold, and also that it might, scratch a particular itch of, showing people's backstories and how we're all very complicated and show up in different spaces in different ways.
Right.
And also eating.
I think.
Yeah. No. And also, I'm sorry, Kyle, did you say recipes that are actually songs?
Yes, absolutely. So oh man, I feel like that's kind of a spoiler too, but whatever. You won't see it coming, but it's just one of those things where each character is so unique. Each recipe feels so unique. Even as something as simple as Japanese fried chicken becomes this really beautiful story of just like how this brother and sister got disconnected from each other because of things that happened to their parents. Like, it's so amazing. And as somebody, I grew up in a single parent household. Cooking was very important to me at a very young age, to be supportive of my mother and stuff like that. But also I grew up in West Philly, which is a food desert. So my relationship with food has been a really big deal these last few years over the pandemic. I was vegetarian for 5 years before that. But then once we kind of got into that, I really felt the need to reconnect with the foods from my childhood, from home. I'm 5 minutes away from my mom's house. I just got back from there for Thanksgiving, and I'm there all the time, and I cook for my mother now, especially as an adult. That's a really great experience. So something like this, I could just really relate to. So I think there is definitely some bias in my suggestion here, but if you have any relationship with food and cooking and cuisine, if you have any interest in East Asian and Japanese food, check it out. It's a great watch, especially if you're trying to level up from, what's anime out there these days. I think it's a really good way to get into some live action stuff from Japan.
Cool. I love it.
Cool.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta go stream some Japanese diners. I'll talk to you quickly.
Is that you can make that your way message, Neil?
Yeah, right. Yeah. Do we want to talk about podcasts? I have opinions and experiences.
Oh my God. Yes.
That I came locked and loaded for. Yeah.
Let's talk about podcasts on this podcast.
I'll kick it off. Yeah. What else is modern media but discussing media in media about media for media people?
And my brain just broke.
All right. Two podcasts that I've been coming back to over and over again this year. And I should say, like, I am somebody who listens to probably a couple dozen hours of podcasts a week in various ways. Not always at one time speed, and in different ways of engaging with them. But now, all that said, one I want to highlight is called Normal Gossip. It's a product. Let's edit that out, Darnell. It is a product of Defector Media, which has Philly ties, and the host, Kelsey McKinney, is now a Philadelphia-based podcaster, which is very exciting, though it's not a Philly-focused podcast. And to me, this podcast, which is, I think they say that they're just finishing up their third season now, maybe second season. It's a mix of like investigative journalism of, like true crime style, plus storytelling, plus very light role playing. Like if you were in these shoes, what would you do? Because they basically collect gossipy stories from listeners. They always say a friend of a friend submitted this, and analyze the choices that people make around basically Western culture and norms and etiquette. And also they weave into it conversations around religion and politics, and what is gossip and why does it have this bad rap? And well, it's often been used to further marginalize people of already marginalized genders and races, and it's just a great like top to bottom analysis of how we all work through societal challenges, and some of them are super low stakes and some of them are life altering for people, but it's just a real delight to listen to. Have any of you listened to it, or am I?
Nope, but I'm gonna write it down.
No.
What was the name of it again?
It's Normal Gossip. It's a really good like while I'm cooking podcast, or like I'm out on a solo adventure and I need something in my ears, because it's pretty gripping, but it's not like you need every tip and turn. But yeah, I've listened to every episode and want to talk about it constantly with people. I'll hold on to my second one until everybody else goes around. Elena, what podcasts are you listening to other than Broad Street Review?
Well, obviously, I used to not be a podcast listener, but then that was one evolution that happened for me in the pandemic, when I was spending a lot more time like walking around by myself and spending time in my house. I started listening to more podcasts. Anyway, I'll pick two out of many. One is called Unsolicited Fatties Talk Back. And it centers this group of fat, trans, disabled people of color who are having conversations around an advice column format, where they take a existing advice column off the internet somewhere, and they talk about the issues raised, which touch on disability, desirability, politics, fat liberation, diet culture. And they talk about these questions with an anti-ableist, anti-racist, fat liberation lens. And it's always really thought-provoking, really holistic conversations that are drilling into really the root of a lot of issues that I feel like a lot of media commenters are never quite really drilling all into, specifically the way that disability really informs every piece of our lives, and we all need to get aware of it. So that's a big one for me. Cool. And I'll do another one, which is in a different vein. I also do a lot of listening to podcasts about literature. And one I stumbled on this year is a podcast called Joe's Boys, which is hosted by the author Peyton Thomas. And it basically is bringing the host together with scholars and academics and authors on literature and gender studies to explore the thesis that Louisa May Alcott was actually a trans man, which has a lot of really interesting historical evidence for. And the podcast itself called Joe's Boys. It goes chapter by chapter through the novel Little Women, really excavating all of the themes around gender and gender roles and sexuality that are in this classic novel. And it's incredibly modern feeling. And it folds in so many surprising perspectives on gender on this historical text. Anyway, I would super recommend anyone to give it a listen.
Cool.
I wish I had some podcast recommendations for you, to be honest. I have been feeling some podcast fatigue lately. And this is coming from someone who did podcasting for about 3 years. Not to say that I'm done with it, just, need a break. Trying not to have too many voices in my head, if that makes sense. But I know that's just me being, well, maybe it's not me making excuses, but just haven't been there. But to continue on the theme of how much our fans love sports, I've really been into the JJ Redick podcast. Because JJ, if you know, was a Sixer for a short amount of time here. One of the most hated players of all time. He went to Duke. Screw those guys. But no, I think he has some really interesting conversations with the players that are making that really make them, they're not just these millionaires who play basketball. I think there's a lot of humanness to them that gets lost in, the way that the media normally covers sports, which is always my draw to sports and athletics, is the narrative, is who to root for and what they're going for and what their motivations are. Being able to see that nuance has been really interesting. So I've been really into his podcast this year, but that's probably been about it for me this year. But I'm hoping to change that, or, when the time is right, because I do miss it. I just haven't found the right ones for me lately.
Yeah. I feel like it underscores a point that I've been looking to articulate for some time, and so I'm really glad that I just had this moment of clarity, which is we're not all going to consume the same amount of media in the same proportions at the same speed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Once we recognize that, life becomes a lot easier, Kyle, I think you're watching TV in a different way than I am. And Elena's reading books, and I struggled to find what books did I finish this year so far. There's still a month left at the time of this recording. I might finish several.
We'll see. As we get Neil back in here, I was thinking of, I don't really keep a good list of things that I watch. I really rely on cues to kind of tell me, like, when I have time that I can actually sit down and maybe consume these. So let me see if I get this. So for books, I was thinking about it for books. One of the books that I really enjoyed reading was Allow Me to Retort, A Black Guy's Guide to the Constitution by Elie Mystal.
Huh.
And yeah, it was, yes, because it is just crazy that, you'd be surprised how much of our population does not know what's in the Constitution.
Is it like a mix of memoir and nonfiction?
I would not be surprised.
Well, he sort of points out these moments and then refers to where it's stated in the Constitution. So it's basically like, you thought this, but no, this is actually it. But it's really interesting. And if you've heard Elie Mystal in any interview, he always sounds angry. But it's just like, he kind of reminds me of Mugatu from Zoolander. He's like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. And but it is a good read. It's even better to listen if you get the audiobook. Another book that I enjoyed was How to Tell a Story by The Moth. Which is really good. It kind of really let us in on The Moth's process of storytelling. And it was really interesting because there's some of those things that I've organically figured out to do, but listening to them talk about that process, I was just like, wow, like, these were great walks. So I took many walks, and that's how I consumed these books.
I love audiobooks.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Me too, because I can get something else done. So I'm getting my steps in, and I'm actually feeding my brain at the same time. Another book I read was called Everything is Fucked, a book about hope by Mark Manson. And Mark Manson wrote The Subtle Art
I knew it, yeah.
Oh.
What is the other? Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck, I think.
I think you're right.
So I follow his YouTube channel, and a lot of it is very commonsensical. but it was an interesting read. So I enjoyed that. Television. Since I'm a streaming fiend, Mythic Quest on Apple TV. I very much enjoyed. The new season right now is just as funny as the last season.
Does that have something to do with video games?
Mythic Quest, yes. Yes. So it's basically an office comedy, but it's set in a in the office of a video game studio. And it's was it Rob McElhenney from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and Charlie Day write it, but Charlie Day is not in it, and the cast is amazing. Over the pandemic, they did a pandemic episode that I thought was just beautiful, and it was just like one of these things that ended very hopeful and fun. But this season has been really good, so I enjoyed that. There was another sort of crime comedy on Peacock called The Resort, and it was very similar to the other one I'm going to mention, The White Lotus, on HBO Max. But it was like this. It sort of it was like it was present, but it was past. It was like taking a story that happened, in the past, and kind of combining it with the main characters who are at this resort in the future. They pick up on this crime that's kind of been like it has been solved, and then they stumble upon all these clues that kind of tie them into it somehow. And it's just like every episode you're like, what? Huh? What? It was very good. And it starred I always forget his name. From what was that show on NBC? Oh, William Jackson Harper.
Oh, The Good Place. Yeah.
The Good Place.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know why I think of it.
Love it.
It starred him. Yeah, it was really good. And it was I think it was 8 episodes. 8 episodes. Also, Ben Sinclair from HBO's High Maintenance was in the series as well. Yeah, it was just every time, every episode left us hanging, and we just needed more. And
Love
The
that.
White Lotus, of course, HBO Max now in its 2nd season.
I have not watched the second season yet. The first season, I was like, I had a lot of like sad, difficult feelings about that. Just and like in my own experience of exiting a really bad marriage several years ago. It just no spoilers, but brought up a lot.
Yeah. Well, season 2, it's kind of interesting how they're playing this out, I guess. So every season, you're at a White Lotus resort. So it's a different one every season, and it's a different cast of characters, but some characters carry on. Jennifer Coolidge is in the 2nd season, as she was in the 1st season, and the story is just as it's unfolding. It's just whoa, wow.
Cool.
So if you're watching it, you know.
Yep. I was talking to friends the other day about how season 2 feels like we're acknowledging again the flaws of human characters, but there's a bit more nuance into who's good, who's bad, who's making choices that are intentionally hurtful or challenging. Their station in life. Again, I'm trying to speak very, very broadly about it, but I think it's just beautiful script writing, and also the scenery is top notch.
Yes. Yeah. Very, 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 very good. And for podcasts, besides the Emery productions,
naturally,
Hidden Brain, I listen to.
Oh yeah,
I've heard of that.
Hunker the Danton. I hope I said that right. It's just understanding like why understanding why your brain does the things it does. There was just this whole series on relationships in the last 4 or 5 episodes that was really good. But yeah, I this is how I'm really convinced that all of our devices are listening, because I will have a conversation in my living room and it'll show up in one of these bits of media. It's usually YouTube, so I'm like, I don't have Google devices except for my thermostat. My thermostat is listening, because every time I go into, uh, you know, another piece of media, there's an option there that's like, this is what I was talking about. But Hidden Brain tends to touch on a lot of conversations that I have with my partner, with my friends. Yeah, and that's been a mainstay. I always enjoy that one. I always walk away from that feeling, well, a lot to think about.
Cool. Shall we wrap up in the interest of giving folks time to check out all of our recommendations?
Yes, we're gonna
Yeah,
have.
let
I'm
them
gonna
let
have a
them
link
add to
to all
cart,
of
add
these
to
in the
queue.
show notes too. Yes. Were you going to talk about movies?
I think, well, maybe we could jump on another time and do it.
Okay. Cool.
I
I'm
think
into
we could
that.
do an entire movie podcast.
Movies at Broad Street
Yeah,
Review.
I would.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. Because considering this year was still a year where we were not quite on board with returning to theaters, and so people who were returning to theaters had what that experience was interesting, and it would be interesting to know what sort of brought you out of your comfort zone to actually go experience it on a big screen and surround sound and comfy seats and
Totally.
whatnot.
Yeah, let's convene again and talk about. And we have another conversation like this coming up, except it'll be more interactive. We're doing a virtual event for our writers, our staff, and friends of BSR who are our monthly donors. And that's going to be in the end of December. We're going to have folks bring their favorite picks. We're going to talk it through. We're going to hear what everyone's into. And so if you want to join us for that conversation, we would love to see you. And just go ahead and become a friend of BSR anytime this month. And we will send you the invite for that event.
And most importantly, when you engage with Broad Street Review, broadstreetreview.com, you're not smacked in the face by a paywall.
Yes. Yes.
So there's that. And so help keep us running so that you don't get smacked in the face with a paywall. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That has been the bane of my existence right now, because I get it, I totally understand it, but it sort of drives you nuts when you're trying to, just tune into one or two articles, and you get past it, and it's like, you've reached your limit. I'm like, I'm sorry, I haven't read anything except the title of this website.
And that plugs into just generally our mission to improve access, which which means so many different things in how we do our coverage. So we love that folks can access our coverage for free anytime. And our donors are the ones who, power us, make that possible. So we super appreciate their support this year, in the past, in the future. And it's been really fun to chat with you guys here. And we would love to keep this conversation going. So if you want to get in touch with us about what you're consuming and what's got you excited, keep in touch through email, social media, and check out our event coming up in December.
Yeah, absolutely. And and of course, in the outro, I will regurgitate all of this all over again.
Thank you.
How to support us, how to stay connected. But yes, this was great. I always love. I think the best podcast interviews are the ones where I don't have to say as much. And I just say go, and then we get such great content. So Elena Johns, Kyle B. Hiller, Neil Bardhan, thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
taking the
Darnell.
time
Thanks for having us,
to
Darnell.
go over these
This
recommendations.
is fun.
We still got to get movies and theater and a couple other things in there.
So much.
It'd be really great. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. And so we should do this again soon. And we
Yes,
should do it more
please.
frequently. I know we say this all the time.
Thanks, Darnell.
Want to get involved with Broad Street Review? Head on over to our website at www.broadstreetreview.com and click Get Involved at the top. While you're there, help keep us running and click Donate to find out how. Connect with us on social media, on Facebook and Twitter at BroadST Review. Thank you for helping to keep the conversation going.